Hello and welcome to our first GameMaker video tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to begin to understand what a 2D game engine is. We're going to have a look at GameMaker and we're going to start to create a 2D game level that's got a movable avatar who the player plays as, and there's a couple of enemy characters in there as well, and if we hit the enemy characters it's going to kill us and end the game. So we can look at making a very simple game. The main objects of this lesson are going to be to help you understand what a 2D game engine is, to help you understand the difference between sprites and objects, and it's going to be to help you see how you can set up a very simple rule and how you can add some very simple events and actions to the player's object. So the first thing we need to do is go over to this new tab over here where we open up a new project, and we're going to name our project, and I'm going to call this My First Game, and I'm going to click the create button. And I'm going to call it My First Game version 2. There we go. And I'm going to click OK. It will start to make my game, and it should start opening up in a second. Here we go. Okay. The first thing to note, is this is GameMaker. It's made by Yo-Yo Games Studio. It's a 2D game engine. Now, a game engine is a piece of software that allows us to create interactive worlds where the player can make things happen. So this is where we make the game itself. Game engines are where we can bring in assets that are made outside the program, like sounds, image files, sprite sheets that you might make in Photoshop or GIMP or something like that, or the sounds might be made in Audacity. But it's where we collect all the different elements and different assets that we've made outside the game, and we start to put them together and add that level of interactivity where we make things happen. GameMaker is a 2D game engine, which means that the games that we produce in this are 2D games, so they've we've got X and Y movement, we can move up and down, we can move left and right. It's not a 3D game engine like Unity or Unreal Engine, but it's an absolutely great piece of software. The first thing we're going to have a look at is the layout of GameMaker itself. Okay, so we've got three main windows here and the taskbar at the top. The taskbar is your normal kind of file, for saving projects, opening project. We can edit stuff that we've got open, we can look at the windows and access lots of different stuff that's available as well down here in the menus. On the left hand side, this tab here contains all the different elements that we're going to have in our game, and this is where we're going to kind of group them underneath these headings. So all the sprites will be under sprites. When we make objects, they'll appear under objects. When we make rooms, which are like levels essentially, they'll appear there. Over here, this main window here is our main workspace. When we're creating or editing any of the different elements and assets that are down here in the left hand tab, it'll open a pop-up window here, so we can use that in this workspace here. And down the bottom we've got our compiler. Okay, right. What we're going to do today is we're going to create a very simple game, and the first thing we need to do is create sprites. Now, sprites are image files, and that's all they are really. It's just the image itself. So to create a new sprite, we go right click on sprites in the left hand tab and go create sprite, and it'll open up our window here. Now there's two options. We can either load up a sprite if we've already made one in Photoshop or GIMP, or we can edit a sprite, so we can make a new sprite. What we want to do is want to make a new sprite, and this sprite is going to be avatar. So I'm going to, under name, I'm going to call it avatar SPR for sprite, and I'm going to click edit sprite. When this comes up, it opens up another little window, and we want to click this white button here. If we hold our mouse over it, we see it says create a new sprite, and this sets our width and height of our sprite, how big it's going to be in pixels. 32 pixels by 32 pixels is fine. It's quite small, but that's all we want. We're going to click OK. Then I'm going to double click in this window to edit it. Now here's our editor. It's a very simple stripped back version of a bitmap editor, so a raster graphics editor. So if we have a look here, I'm going to zoom in using the little magnifying glasses up the top here. This one on the right hand side is a little plus icon. I click that a few times so we can zoom in. That's better. Now I'm going to make a very simple sprite. I'm sure you guys will be able to do much better. On the left hand side of the image editor, we've got lots of different tools here. So we've got a pencil tool for free drawing. I'm going to click Ctrl and Z to undo that. We've got an eraser tool, line tool, we've got a pipette tool for picking colours, we've got a paint bucket tool which will fill the whole of this with one uniform colour, and then we've got the object drawing tools. Now I'm going to select an ellipse, which is a circular thing. Underneath shape on the left hand side, we'll see there's three different options. Okay, and these are related to the colours over here on the right hand side and what I've got set over here. The first option, the top one, which is just a black outline of a box, will just draw the outline of your ellipse shape. The second option will draw the outline of your ellipse shape, but fill it with the secondary colour under the right colour. Control and Z, get rid of that. And the third option is just the fill, and that will just do fill colour, so just one uniform colour. Now I'm going to go for the middle option. I'm going to double click right colour to change my colour, because I don't want the centre of the colour to be white. We'll make it a nice kind of yellow colour. There we go. Lovely. And I'm going to drag that out. And like I say, this is a very, very simple character. I'm sure you guys will be able to do much better. So I've just drawn that using the ellipse tool for the outline, and then the little pencil tool for the eyes and mouth. And I'm going to click tick when I'm done, and that closes up the image editor. And then we need to click close again, click OK to save changes, and there's our sprite there. And I'm going to click OK. One thing you can do is we want to set the centre of our sprite to the centre of the image. If we click centre, it will work out the centre pixel and say that's the centre. And we click OK. Next sprite we're going to create, next image is going to be the enemy. And I'm going to call it enemy SPR in the name option. Just type that in, and once again we're going to click edit sprite. We're going to click create a new sprite, the icon, which is a white page, and 32 pixels by 32 pixels is the size of this object. We click OK, I'm happy with that. And we double click in there to bring up the image editor. We're going to zoom in again, and just the same as before, I'm going to click the ellipse tool. This time I'm going to change the colour inside the ellipse to a red. We see the left colour, the outline is going to be black, but the inside is going to be red. Just simply to signify to our player that this is a different kind of object in the game world. And I'm just going to draw an unhappy face on it. There we go. Wonderful. Okay, so click the tick button, and then once again click tick to OK, save the changes. Click centre, that's the centre of the sprite, and click OK. Now at the minute I've just created these two sprites. These are just images, that's all they are, they're just image files. They can't actually do anything on their own. The main thing that we use to create interactive objects in the game world, that's stuff that we can control or interact with, or will affect the game and the gameplay, is an object. So down here we've got objects. We're going to right click objects, and we want to create a new object, and the first object we're going to create is going to be our avatar, who the player is going to play as. So under the name we're going to call it avatar obj for object, and beneath that we've got a little sprite option here. Now this is where we assign the image file, okay, that the object will look like in the game world, and we want our avatar object to look like our avatar sprite. So we click the little blue box and click avatar sprite from the drop down menu. Perfect. Okay. Objects are made up of a few different things really. We've got the sprite that they look like, and then they're controlled really by events and actions. Now an event is something that happens to the sprite or in the game world, and the action is the consequence of the event. So think of it as the event's the cause and the action's the consequence. So for example, we could add a keyboard event. So under events I'm going to go add event, I'm going to click keyboard, and I'm going to click left. Now what this means is when the player clicks the left button on their keyboard, okay, that's the event, the action, the kind of the trigger, and then the action's going to be, I'm going to drag this green icon that looks like a compass, which is moved fixed over, and click the left button on there and set the speed to 3, and I'm going to click OK. And what that means is when the player clicks the left button on the keyboard, the object avatar will start moving in the left direction, because I clicked that arrow, at a speed of 3. Okay, and I'm going to go and add the rest of my keyboard events now. And there we go. Quickly go add event, keyboard, up. And I'm doing this because I want the player to be able to move up, down, left and right in the game world. Okay, those are going to be the basic controls that the game uses. And there we go. Perfect. Okay. So we've now got an avatar, and when we press the keyboard buttons left, right, up and down, the avatar is going to move in the direction we're pressing at a speed of 3, which is a fairly moderate speed. That's okay for what we want. I'm going to click OK. That's all we're going to do for our avatar object for now. We just want it to be able to move around. The next object we want to create is going to be the enemy object. So once again we right click and we go create object. We're going to call this enemy obj. We're going to select the sprite, the image that we want to represent this in the game world, as enemy sprite. And our enemy sprite is going to be different. Whilst we want the player to be able to move around the game world and control what the player does, we want the enemy sprite to move on their own, and we're going to have to try and avoid them. So what we need to do here is add a different event. We're going to add a create event. And what this means is when the enemy object is created, and then we're going to drag across an action, and that's going to be the grey compass called move free. We're going to set the direction that the enemy moves when it creates as random. I'm going to type in 360 in open brackets. And what that means is when the enemy object is created, it's going to move in a random direction in any of the 360 degrees around it. And we're going to set the speed of this at 5, so it's a bit faster than the player to make it harder. So when the enemy object is created, it's going to move in a random direction at a speed of 5. Okay, that's fine for now. Next thing we'll do is we're going to go back to sprites and we're going to make another sprite. And we're going to call this the wall sprite, wall SPR. We're going to edit this once again, create a new sprite by clicking the new icon. We're going to keep the size of it exactly the same as the others. And this sprite, it doesn't really matter what it looks like. I'm going to use the paint bucket tool and I'm going to fill it with a red colour. It doesn't really matter. Click the tick button, click the second tick button, click center and click OK. And I'm going to create an object, and we're going to call this object wall obj. We're going to set the sprite to the wall sprite. Now, at the minute we've got some tick boxes beneath here. The tick box that says visible, if it's ticked, it means that in the game world the player will be able to see this object. We don't want the player to see the wall. The wall's going to be invisible. The wall's only purpose is going to be to stop any of the objects within there, that's the player and the enemy, from wandering off screen. So we're going to build a wall around the edge of where the screen is, so that nothing can leave what the player can see. Okay, so we're going to untick visible. We want it to be invisible, but we are going to make it solid. That's important because what we do want is we want any objects that hit the wall, it to be a solid wall, and they'll bounce off. So we've got solid, and we'll click OK. Next thing we need to do with both the avatar and the enemy object is we need to add a new event, and that event is going to be a collision event. And what this means is when the object collides with the wall, and we'll select wall from drop down menu, then it's going to bounce off, and if we hold our mouse over the jump sub menu here, this white block with a green arrow that looks like it's bouncing off, we'll drag that over, that's bounce, and we'll click OK. So when the enemy sprite collides with the wall, it bounced off it. And click OK, and we'll do exactly the same with the player. So we're going to go add event, collision event with the wall, and we're going to drag cross bounce. Okay, now we've got all the sprites and objects we need so far for our very simple game. What we don't have is we don't have a game level. Now in GameMaker they call game levels rooms. So we're going to right click rooms and we're going to create a new room. Here we go, fantastic. Now when it opens up we'll be able to see that on the left hand side we've got a tab once more with all our options for what the background looks like, views, which we'll come to in a few weeks, and physics. The one we want to look at today is objects. The objects menu allows us to place objects within our game level. Now if we left click we can see all the objects we can place. Okay, and there are all the objects in that menu there. First of all, let's just place our avatar in the centre by left clicking. Going to select the enemy objects now and just dot a few of them around the level, and then we're going to select the wall object. Now we're going to build this wall, if we use the middle mouse button to zoom out, around the outside of the level, and we do that by left clicking and placing them all, and there we go. And what we can do, if we hold down shift and control and left click, we can put down lots of the objects in one continuous kind of wall around. It's a bit messy, doesn't really matter. And there we go. So we've got our wall around the outside, so nothing's going to be able to get through because the wall's solid all the way through, there's no gaps. And when we're done, we're just going to click the tick for select. Click yes there. Now to preview our game level, to see how it's going, up on the left hand side here we've got a little green play button, and when we hover our mouse over it says run the game. This is going to create a test of our game level, so if we click that it will slowly build it, and we'll see down in the compile window as the game engine, the piece of software, starts to build the level and figure out how it should all work now that we've told it what we want it to do. This will fill up, and then in the centre in a minute our game level will be created. Now what we want the player to be able to do is move up, down, left and right, and kind of escape from the red things that are a bit faster than it. So here we go, this is it loading, and there we go. I can move up, I can move right, I can move down, I can move left, and if we go up to the wall we'll see a bounce off it, as the enemies do. Nothing's escaping off the window, so it's all still there. Brilliant stuff. Fantastic. Okay, we've got one problem though. When the enemies hit us, nothing happens. Okay, also, I've let go of the keys now, but I'm still moving. So when no key is being pressed, I'm still moving in the direction that I've already pressed. Now, you might want that to happen, but I don't. So we're going to X out of that, and we've got two things to do. First of all, if we go into Avatar, we've told it what to do if press left, right, up and down, but we haven't told it that if no key is pressed, we don't want to move. So we need to go back into Add Event, go back into Keyboard, and down at the bottom, you'll see there's a No Key option. So when no key is pressed, we'll drag across the green compass again for moved fixed, click in the centre and keep the speed at 0. And that says when no key is pressed, stay where you are and don't move because the speed is 0. The next thing we need to be able to do is we need to add another event, and that's a collide event. So add event, collide, and this time we want to say what happens when we collide with the enemy object. So if we select enemy object as our collision, if we move over to the right hand side, we'll see we've got lots of tabs of different actions that we can drag over. We've got main 1, main 2, main 3, we've got controls, scores, extra and a draw menu. Now what we want to do is we want to say that if we hit the enemy object then the game's over, and we'll find that under main 2. If you have a look into the game submenu of the main 2 tab, hover your mouse over this green icon with a white circle, and when you do it should say end game. I'm going to drag that across into our action for the enemy object collide event. So when we collide with the enemy object, the game ends. Let's click OK, and let's test this once more. So if we click the play button, run the game, it will create a little working demo of our level. And we can see the compiler working again and writing the chunks. And let's get ready. So here we go, it's loading up. And let's see. First of all, when I let go of the keyboard, it's not moving, it's just stopping wherever I last was, which is good. And let's see what happens when I hit one of the enemy objects. There we go. And game over. Closes the game window. So, that's our first lesson on GameMaker. We've learned how to create sprites using the image editor. We've learned how to create simple objects and assign sprites to them. We've learned how to add movement using simple keyboard commands to our player's avatar. We've learned how to create a wall around our game level to stop different objects leaving. And we've learned how to create an enemy object that when it's created it moves in a random direction, and when it hits us the game's over. Okay, so let's save this. So if we go save all, that will create a backup of our game. And that's the end of our first lesson. Next week we'll be looking at how to create a score system in GameMaker, a very simple score system, and the week after we'll be looking at how to create health in our GameMaker level. Thank you very much for watching, I hope you enjoyed it.